After this happens, your instruction gets decoded. So you have a circuit. If you are doing hard wired micro architecture, then it is a circuit, or you could have a micro programmed architecture. In that case you have a micro store, which is another read only memory to which this instruction is fetched, and what you get out is a micro code. So this second stage is basically called as instruction decode. So we all understood what a microcode is. I gave an example in the previous class wherein we described a very simple microarchitecture and explained what is a control path and what is the data path. The control path was actually responsible for guiding the data from the registers to the ALU and from the ALU back to the registers. So the path in which the data traveled was the data path, and all the necessary signals for guiding the data through the architecture was constitutes the control path, and this control path was defined by the microcode. So we did develop for several instructions, several machined instructions like add, multiply, divide, compare. We did develop the corresponding, or we did explain you the corresponding microcode, and that is precisely what happens here. So once an instruction is given to that decoder, it can be either a hardwired microarchitecture or a micro-programmed microarchitecture. You get back a microcode. Once the microcode is fetched, then in the last class I explained you three stages, namely your data needs to be fetched. So either from register or from memory your data is fetched. So that is the third stage, what you call as data fetch. Then your instruction execution. So this is your ALU, and you do what you call as the instruction execution. And then this is a final stage where you again store the results. So up to last class, I am sure we have covered a major portion of how this is actually implemented in the architecture, and this is the sum up of what we have done so far. So we have 5 stages in the execution of an instruction. There is an instruction fetch and increment program counter, then there is an instruction decode, and there is a data fetch, there is an instruction execution, and there we go and store the results. Now please understand that this is where we left in the last class. There are different hardware which are responsible for doing these stages. The hardware that is responsible for fetching the instruction is different from the hardware that is going to decode the instruction, both are different from the hardware that is responsible for fetching data. All are different from the hardware that is going to execute the instruction, and again all these are different from the hardware that are going to store the results. And that we explained using a simple toy microarchitecture how different hardware are responsible for carrying out different stages in the execution of an instruction. And again I repeat, there are 5 stages, and these 5 stages, each of these stages are executed by different hardware. Now suppose I say we did talk about what we call as a single cycle execution. Single cycle execution means that the clock, please understand this is very important. Sorry. So please understand this is very important. This is the clock that is fed into your processor. The clock dictates the frequency of your system. Today you see normal paper advertisements, they say 3.6 gigahertz processor, 2.1 gigahertz processor. What is this 2.1 gigahertz? That is the frequency of this clock, right? Now a single cycle execution means in one cycle of the clock one instruction gets executed, right? So what should be the duration of this cycle, or what you call as the time period of this cycle? Please understand, frequency is 1 by time period. Frequency is 1 by time period. So if I decrease the time period, I am going to get fast systems. So one of the important things that we need to do is to decrease this time period. Now if I again go back to a single cycle execution, that means in one clock cycle we have to complete an execution of an instruction. Then what should be the duration of this? We calculate the duration as follows. Let the instruction fetch and increment PC take say T1 time. Let the instruction decode take T2 time. Data fetch takes T3 time. Your instruction execution takes T4. Your register storing results take T5. So the total time period that is required for me between this and this would be T1 plus T2 plus T3 plus T4 plus T5. My objective is to go and reduce this time period. If I reduce this time period, that means my CPU is going to work faster, because if my time period reduces, frequency being 1 by time period, my frequency is going to increase. So the next effort for me is to, the next logical effort for any designer would be to go and decrease this time period and increase the frequency of execution. Now how am I to go and decrease this time period? And that particular concept is what we call as pipelining, and I will be describing pipelining in the next 20 minutes in this class. Now the genesis of pipelining comes again from the fact, which I am repeating again, that there are 5 stages in the execution of an instruction, and each stage is basically handled by a different set of hardware. As I again told you, when say for example instruction execution is happening, all the hardware responsible for fetching, decoding and fetching the data and storing the results are idle. So it is very important that we start trying and using this hardware. So the concept actually is driven by what we see typically in automobile factories. Suppose there is a car that needs to be made. It's not that one guy will be responsible for making the body, fitting the tire, fitting the horn, fitting the electronics, etc. So let me say that at least there are 4 stages in making a car. Somebody has to assemble the body, somebody has to put the tires, somebody has to fix the electronics, somebody has to paint it and send it back. So we suppose there are 4 cars to be made. So the first car's body is assembled. When the first car's tires are being fitted, the second car's body can be assembled. When the first car's electronics are fixed, the second car's tires could be fit, the third car can be assembled. And then when the first car is painted, the second car's tires could be fixed, the second car's electronics could be fixed, the third car's tires could be fixed, and the fourth car could be assembled. Okay. So in some sense, what would have, if one person was doing all these things, let me say it takes 1 day each to assemble a car, to put the tires, fix the tires, to assemble the electronics, and then to basically paint the car, then it will take 4 days for making a car, correct? Now by doing this, what happens, on the 4th day I am going to first get the first car, but on the 5th day I will get the second car, if I am going to partition this and give each activity to different person. And this basic concept forms the basis of pipelining. So let me explain this. Suppose I have 6 instructions to be executed. Let me call it I1, I2 to I6. Let me assume for the sake of argument that each of this T1 is 2 units of time. If I am not going to do any pipelining, each instruction will take 10 units of time, and since I have 6 instructions, it is going to take 6 into 10, which is 60 units of time. Each unit, assuming that it takes 2 units of time, and I have 6 instructions to execute. So to execute 1 instruction is going to take 10 units, to execute 6 instructions is going to take 60 units of time. Now let us see what happens. What we are now trying to say is, you first fetch instruction I1. Please carefully note this. You are fetching instruction I1. Now when you are decoding instruction I1, that is I1 has reached this stage, you go and fetch I2. So when you are fetching the data for I1, you go and decode I2 and you go and fetch the instruction I3. When you are executing I1, you go and fetch the data for I2, you decode I3 and you go and fetch instruction I4. When you are actually storing the results of I1, you execute instruction I2, fetch I3, decode I4, fetch data for I3, decode I4 and fetch the instruction for I5, fetch the instruction I5. Right. So how much time has elapsed? I1 has passed from this stage to this stage, so totally 10 units have elapsed. So at the end of 10 units, you are going to get I1. When will you get I2? At the end of 12 units, because I2 has progressed to this stage when I1 is storing its result. So I2 will be got at 12 units. At 14 units you are going to get I3, at 16 units you are going to get I4, at 18 units you are going to get I5, and 20 units you are going to get I6. So what took me 60 units of time now is going to take me only 20 units of time. So you immediately get 3 times improvement in the performance, 3 times improvement in the performance, which is a very, very big achievement. And most importantly, what would be the clock? In the case of this non-pipelined version, please note that this duration needs to be 10 units. This duration needs to be 10 units, but in this execution, in the pipelined execution, I can make it just 2 units. And in each clock, one instruction will go to the next stage. It will finish the current stage and go to the next stage. So in the first clock cycle, your I1 is here. In the second clock cycle, I1 moves here, I2 comes here. In the third clock cycle, I1 goes to this data phase stage, I2 comes here, and I3 comes here, and so on. So in each clock cycle, the instruction progresses to the next stage of its execution. Right? So essentially the frequency of your clock becomes 5 times. It was 10 units in a single cycle execution. Now it becomes 2 units in the pipelined execution. So your frequency has improved 5 times, and what you call as the throughput, this is called throughput. The throughput is nothing but the number of instructions I could finish in unit time. That has improved by 3 times. So it took 60 units, it took 20 units. Suppose I have, say, 600 instructions instead of 6. Suppose I have 600 instructions. This would take 6000 units of time. If I have 600 instructions to take 6000 units of time, how much will this take? The second instruction finishes at 12, the third instruction at 14, and so on. Okay. So this will take actually 10 plus every instruction you are going to get 2 units later. So it is going to be 599 into 2. 10 plus 599 into 2. You get I2 at 12, which is 10 plus 2. This is 10 plus 2 into 2. This is 10 plus 3 into 2. This is 10 plus 4 into 2. So I1 is 10, I2 is 12, I3 is 14. So IK, the kth instruction would be, I am writing it here, the kth instruction would be 2 plus k minus 1, sorry, 10 plus k minus 1 into 2. Your first instruction is 10 plus 1 minus 1 into 2, which is 10. Second instruction is 10 plus 2 minus 1 into 2, that is 12. third instruction is 10 plus 3 minus 1 into 2, which is 14, and so on. So your 600th instruction will finish at 10 plus 599 into 2, which is 1198 plus 10, which is around 2008. And note that this takes 6000 units, but this takes 2008 units. Again you see that difference of around 3 times difference is still basically maintained. So if you keep increasing, say I am asking for 1 million instructions or 10 million instructions, please understand from a user's perspective, if I could finish a program in 3 minutes, if it gets finished off in 1 minute, it's not a big deal. But suppose a program takes 3 days and it is finished off in 1 day, then it makes a big difference. So this 3 times is 3x, we call 3x. This 3 times speed up actually means a big thing when we look at large programs that runs for days together. Even say if it runs for 3 hours but you finish it off in 1 hour, that also means a big difference from the user's perspective, right. So, so this is the basic concept of pipelining, wherein 2 important advantages come out of pipelining. One thing is we are increasing the throughput, we are increasing the frequency of execution, and at the same time we are also effectively and efficiently utilizing the hardware. And the inspiration for pipeline comes from assembly of automobiles, where typically the same thing is done, and the fact that execution of an instruction has 5 mutually exclusive stages in terms of which hardware will handle which stage. Now in the next 5 minutes I would like to put forth one point here, that there is something that needs to be added into this diagram. Okay, the thing that needs to be added here is that how are we going to realize this in hardware? As I told you, an instruction is fetched. When the instruction is decoded, the next instruction can be fetched, right. So if I am for the decoder, if I am using the content of the instruction register for decoding, then what will happen is when this instruction is decoded, when the new instruction is fetched, that can go and change the decoding. So when I am decoding the first instruction, and that the second instruction can come and erase the first instruction and get stored in the instruction register. First I am fetching I1 to the instruction register, then I am using I1 to get it decoded. So for this hardwired or hardwired microarchitecture or the micro store, the input to this would be the instruction that is there in the instruction register. While I am decoding that instruction, if a new instruction is fetched, that will come and erase this I1, and if it starts erasing this I1, then you may not get a proper decoding of I1. So it is very important that when the instructions are flowing into the pipeline, they should also be isolated. So what we do is the way by which we can isolate each of these stages so that the respective instruction is being handled by that stage, and that I fetch some fetch instruction to the previous stage is not going to affect that particular execution. This is basically done by putting what you call as registers here. We are putting registers here. What it means to put the registers? So the first instruction is fetched. In the next stage it is moved, it is fetched, and in the next stage it is moved to register 1. And in the next stage, when the first instruction is being decoded by the decoder, the second instruction comes and stays on the instruction register. When the first instruction's data is being fetched, the instruction is in R2, so if the second instruction comes inside here, its influence will not cross this barrier, because the register is such that only at the clock pulse its data gets updated. So whatever data I get the first instruction, I store it in register 1. So when I am decoding the first instruction, even though a fresh instruction is going to come here, that the change in those values will not basically get reflected to the next stage, because it is isolated by a register. And please note that the register changes its value only when there is a clock pulse. So I1 comes here. So let me say I1 is some 10 10 11 11. In the next clock pulse, this is a clock. In the next clock pulse, this 10 10 11 11 is coming here, which is now going to get decoded here. Now the second instruction could be some 0 1 1 1 1 1. This will be some move, or this can be some add. Now the 0 1 1 1 1 will not come and erase this, because this register will get updated only in the next clock pulse. So within this few units of time where there is no edge of the clock, this register is basically isolating whatever is going to happen before this. And the same thing could be extended. So when I1, after this I1 comes to this register stage, when its data is getting fetched, anything that happens above this is not going to affect I1's data fetch. And then similarly for this stage. So one of the important thing that we need to do when we are doing pipelining is to put registers in between the stages, so that the data that comes, the instruction that comes after a particular instruction, if it is in stage say 1, that will not affect another instruction which is in stage 2. In subsequently that will not affect another instruction which is in stage 3. So isolation of the stages is very important, and this isolation occurs by putting registers. So typically this is how circuits or hardware is built. That is why if you look into some more onto computer architecture courses, they will say that the way the hardware is described, they give it by the name RTL. RTL essentially stands for register transfer level. Register transfer level. Why this word register transfer level? The word register transfer level has its origin from this pipelining concept, wherein between one stage of the pipeline to another stage of the pipeline, the data moves from one register stage to another register trace. The data is transferred from one register stage to another register stage, and that is why this particular concept is called, this particular way of describing the hardware is termed by this word register transfer level. Okay. Now, before we wind up, in the next 3 minutes, I am basically going to pose a small exercise for your thought. Suppose, let us consider these two instructions. Can I just do like this, or there could be some problem? For example, let me say I have add R1, R2, R3, and I have multiply R4, R5, R1. What will add do? R1 equal to R2 plus R3, and what will mult do? R3 is equal to R5 into R1. Now, let me take this as I1 and this as I2. So, I1 is fetched, then I1 when it is getting decoded, I2 is fetched. When I1's data is being fetched, I1's data is being fetched, I2 is getting decoded. When I1 is executing, please note, please give complete attention to what I am saying. When I1 is executing, can I go and fetch the data for I2? If I go and fetch, I1 is still executing, its results are not stored. When I1 is executing, can I go and get the data for I2? If I go and get the data for I2, then please note that I2 has R1 and R5. So, I will get not the latest value of R1, but I will get some value of R1 before this add has executed, which is wrong. What R1 I need? I need the value of R1 that is computed by this add, right? And that value of R1 will not be available when I1 is getting executed. If I am going to go and fetch the data for I2, right, when I1 is getting executed, if I am going to get the data for I2, I will not get that value of R1 which is given by this add instruction. I will get the value of R1 that was before the execution of add. So, that means I will not get the correct answer here. By this, what it means, that this R1 should be the result of this add, but I am not going to get here. This particular problem is called as data dependency. Because of this data dependency, I am going to have a problem in execution. So, if there is a data dependency, then I have to do something to see that I handle this data dependency. I have to do something to see that I need to get rid of this problem. If I am not going to take an action, then I will get incorrect results. So, that is very important. So, I am just leaving it open to you. You have 3 to 4 days for thinking. By next Wednesday, you can refer to any websites, or you can refer to other books, textbooks, and try and understand for yourself how this data dependency can be handled, right? And we will continue with handling this data dependency in more detail in the Wednesday's class. Now, I have 10 minutes for questioning. Any questions, please raise your hand and we will answer. Yes. Who is it? So if there are no questions, there is. Yes.
Good morning, sir.
Hello. Please ask your question. VE cap. Please ask your question.
How the microcode is used to fetch data from register?
Can you be louder? I am not able to hear you.
How the microcode is used to fetch data from the registers?
How do? I'm not
Microcode
very clear. How do microcode?
used to fetch data from the register.
How does microcode is used to fetch data from the register? Yesterday's class did you attend? Last class?
Yes, sir.
Did you attend the last class?
Yes, sir.
Yes. There we explained that there is a multiplexer which is between the registers and the ALU. To that multiplexer, all the registers are connected, and then you can go and select which register you want, right? And the microcode essentially gives you the select bits of those multiplexers. And if you set the multiplexer to that select bits, with that select bits, then the corresponding register value comes to the input register of the ALU. So if you carefully look into last class that I have taught, between the register there is something called a register file. I explained to you what is a register file. It basically has a collection of registers. In our last class we assumed that there are 8 registers in that register file, numbered R0 to R7, and then all these registers are connected through a multiplexer to the input of the ALU, and your microcode tells which of these 8 registers, which registers value should be fed into the ALU. So the microcode basically tells you, if it is register number 2, then it gives you the value 0, 1, 0, and if you give it as a select bit to that multiplexer, automatically the register R2's value is fed into the ALU input. Similarly, if I want to do add R1, R2, R3 as I have put on the screen here, then R2 and R3 have to be routed from the register file to the ALU. So there will be 2 multiplexers, one for operand 1 of the ALU and another for operand 2 of the ALU, because when you want to do an operation I need 2 operands. If I want to add it, I need 2 numbers to add. One of the number is going to come from R2, another number is going to come from R3. So from the register file, all the registers are connected to the ALU input registers through a multiplexer, and to this multiplexer, when I give 0, 1, 0, if you go and verify in your last class, if I give 0, 1, 0, then the R2's value will come to one of the inputs of the ALU. If I give 0, 1, 1, the R3's value will come to another input of the ALU, and then the ALU is given some 0, 0, which means it will add, and then the result, there is a decoder that I put in the last class. If you set it to 0, 0, 1, then the answer will go and sit back in register R1. This is how the registers are being selected by the microcode so that the correct execution of this instruction happens. This I explained in the entire last class, so please go and be very attentive in the class and see the complete last complete class. Please view it again. I hope it is available on the video. I have only explained this for 25 to 30 minutes in the previous class. So please look into it and you will understand how the microcode helps to fetch the correct data for execution of an instruction. Yes?
So what happened if some error is occurred in the pipelining?
What happens when an error happens in the pipeline? Already I have given you one thought. Already I have described one error to you, right? The data dependency error. Did you follow my question? The data dependency, yes or no? Volume please.
Yes, sir.
Did you follow my question?
Yes.
I put a question just before, right? Data dependency. Did you understand that question? Yes or no? Yes, so that itself is an error in the pipeline. Correct?
Sir, but some instruction is not fetched or not executed in the pipelining, then what happens?
The instruction cannot go without execution, but there can be something wrong in the execution of the instruction, right? And when something goes wrong in the execution of the instruction, how are we going to handle? The hardware has to handle it. One of that error that I have already mentioned to you in this class is the data dependency. Now what I want you to do as a homework is please go and look into Google, Wikipedia. You are using Google etc. for a lot of other things. Please use it for academics also. Please go and look into how data dependency is going to be handled. You will get a clue of how hardware handles one such error. There are many such errors. These errors are called as hazards. So a pipeline is to be made such that it handles all these hazards. One such hazard is this data dependency. In the next class I will be teaching you how this data dependency is being handled. Like this there are control dependency and many such structural dependency etc. So there can be many errors that could happen in the execution of an instruction, and those errors are basically, some of these errors are handled by the hardware. If the hardware cannot handle an error, then it raises an exception. It will stop the execution of the particular program and it will transfer the control back to the operating system. There are hazards that could be handled by the hardware. Those are handled. One such hazard is this data dependency, and we will be talking about a little more on control dependency etc. And if there are errors that could not be handled by the hardware, then it stops the execution of the instructions and it raises something called an exception. And once an exception is raised, then the hardware, the operating system takes control and it handles it. For example, if you go and try and divide by 0, the hardware cannot handle that because you are dividing it by 0. You have written a wrong program that goes and divides by 0. Immediately the hardware will say, sorry, I can't handle this, and it will transfer control back to the operating system. Then the operating system will tell you, you are dividing by 0, so your program is not getting executed. So when you write a program, say k is equal to n by 0 in C, and you run it, then what happens? It will tell divide by 0 error and it will come out. How it comes out? The hardware finds out that you are doing a divide by 0 and it tells the operating system, hey, this guy is dividing by 0, I don't know how to handle it. The operating system then goes and closely looks, it also cannot handle, and it gives you an error message. You are understanding what I am trying to say? So there are two ways of handling errors. Number one, errors that could be handled by the hardware itself. One such error is this data dependency and the control. We can't call it as an error, but it should be some controlled execution. But there are errors which are done by the program. The programmer writes a wrong program. One such example is this divide by 0, and that is handled by the operating system. So there will be 1 or 2 classes I will be taking on interrupt service routines and exception handling, and in that class I will teach you how the control goes from the program. When the hardware sees that the program is doing something erroneous, how it will transfer control back to the operating system. We will look in some detail as a part of that interrupt and exception handling class. Yes?
Hello,
Yes.
sir. What is the significance of pre-fetch queue in pipelining?
What is the significance of pre-fetch queue in pipelining? So the question I slightly rephrase. Why do we need something called pre-fetching at all? Okay. Now for people who want to know about pre-fetching, for the others, this is the instruction fetch stage. Should I fetch an instruction or can I fetch the instruction earlier itself? So I say fetch I1, and when I1 is decoded, fetch I2. Can't I fetch I2 earlier itself? Can I not bring a set of instructions? Instead of just fetching I1, can I not fetch I2, I3, I4 and keep here? So this is basically called as instruction prefetching. That is, even before I2 is needed, I go and get it and store it somewhere in what we call as a prefetch queue or prefetch routine, prefetch buffer. Why should I do this prefetch? The need for this prefetch is that memory, this is RAM, right? This memory is much slower than the processor, and when I want to access memory, the memory is outside the processor. So I have to request for memory. I want to establish a path between the memory and the CPU and then transfer data. So for me to access memory, there are 2 steps involved. One is I have to establish a contact with the memory, a path from the memory to the processor, and then transfer data. The time required to establish a contact with the memory, to establish a path from the memory, is called as latency. The time required is termed as memory latency. After that I go and transfer data from the memory to the main processor. Now every time I am fetching the data, for example I am fetching I1, there is a latency involved. When I am fetching I2, there can be another latency involved. So if I am fetching 6 instructions one after the another, there can be 6 times this latency will come up. Instead, if I just go and say I establish the contact with memory once, so the latency is only once, then I go and fetch all the 6 instructions. So that latency now, which was 6 times, suppose the latency is L, if I am going to fetch one instruction, then disconnect from the memory, then fetch the next instruction, then it is going to be 6 into L for this latency. But now I go and say I go and establish the contact once and then fetch all the 6 instructions, keep it in one buffer and use it one by one, then my latency becomes only 1L and other instructions can just go on. So this is one very important concept for why we need prefetching. So the prefetching is because there is an incompatibility in the speed between the processor and the memory. The memory is always say 100 times slower than the processor, 1 order of magnitude slower than the processor. And the second thing is, for me to go and access memory and get data, there is a latency involved, and for me to reduce this latency, I go and prefetch these instructions. Is it clear?
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
There is another question. Times of execution of microprogram depends upon RAM memory or clock speed, which is more significant. So the microprogram, there is no connection between execution of a microcode I interpret your question in two ways. Are you asking what would be the time for decoding or what is the time for execution? If it is the time for decoding, so I have either a circuit which will decode or I will have a ROM, that is read only memory, to which I am inputting the instruction and it will give me the microcodes. This distinction I made in the previous class of what is an hardwired microarchitecture versus what is a microprogrammed microarchitecture. Now in both the cases the hardwired will be very fast, but the hardwire is very difficult to realize, especially when I have 1000 instructions or 700 plus instructions like what you see in Intel machines, right? But your microstore is faster, and other thing is when I want to add more instructions, your microstore approach, the microprogrammed approach is very extensible. So today when we make computer architecture, it is not that we make an architecture for one generation. I would like to have this architecture across 2 to 3 generations, and this so that means I may have to keep adding more and more instructions, and when I start adding more and more instruction, it is very important that I have a microstore. So this is something which we need to see here when we are looking at the instruction decode. When coming to execution of an instruction, of course, if there is an instruction that uses only operands from register, it will be much faster than instructions for which the data needs to be fetched from memory. So when I look at instruction execution, certainly the memory type instructions that actually fetch data from memory and execute are going to be slower than the instructions that fetch data from the registers. So I interpret your question in two ways. This is PECPY or PECPY, and this is I interpret it in two ways. So either it is the time for decoding, certainly the hardwired is much faster than the microprogram, but the hardwired is not as extensible as microprogram. But when it comes to execution of an instruction, if for fetching of data, for execution of the instruction, memory based instructions are faster, while memory based instructions are slower than register based instruction in terms of operands. There is one more question which is PSGCT. What is the cause for X unit delay in each block? Is that unit is in terms of clock that we use for the system? If not, what decides this unit? Very good question. The unit is defined by the technology. In the first class I did talk about transistors, right? So the transistor has a delay. So suppose I want to switch on a transistor, please go back to the first class. When I want to switch on a transistor or I want to switch off a transistor, there is some delay involved in switching on and switching off a transistor. And when we look at technologies, there were 10 years before, the transistors were much slower than what is it today. So the speed actually sort of doubles every 2 to 2.5 years, and that is what we have been seeing. So what that unit, I said 2 units for this, 2 units for this, that was just a very crude assumption just to explain you the concept, but the actual time for the execution of these instructions depend upon how fast the electronics respond to you. If the electronics is very fast, if you have very fast transistors that can switch on and off very quickly, then this time will be less. If it is going to be slower, then the time is going to be more. And these units typically will be in nanoseconds, but it depends upon how the electrons. So the units are basically dictated by the electronics. Yeah, Amrita TN teacher. Do you have any questions, please?
Sir, we're using a register as a buffer in a pipeline structure, but the same structure is the same concept is used in multi-cycle implementation, and multi-cycle implementation is similar task of pipeline. So what is the difference between a multi-cycle implementation and
There is lot of echo.
the question is, you're using a register as a buffer in pipeline, but the same concept is applied in multi-cycle implementation for a processor design. So what is the difference between a multi-cycle implementation and a pipeline?
The pipeline is equivalent to a multi-cycle execution. The notion of pipeline itself comes because it is a multi-cycle execution. So there is no difference between what I call as multi-cycle implementation versus pipelining. Pipelining is equivalent, synonymous, same as multi-cycle implementation.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. Okay. Thank you all, and we meet on Wednesday.